Hello, welcome to Top of the World. We're at it again today. More desks and cabinets, carry on from where we left off. We'll get right back into it. Right, we'll leave that to set. And that will stop it from warping while we're working on the rest of it. So normally I'd like to have done this a bit later on in the stage, but because it's starting to bend, we'll do it now, and then that'll stop it from moving anymore. It's nice to work with something that's almost hardwood. But anyway, there we go. Glue's gone off, so there's nothing more I can do to correct this now. If it's moved, it's moved. But what I do now is, because it's glued and screwed, it's not going to move again. So now we've got what we've got. I've got a slight hump in the middle because I couldn't clamp the middle up. So basically there's a very slight rise there. It won't worsen now because I've got that brace underneath and the two ends. The two ends are perfect. Behind the back. So we'll put back on the 80 grit, the 40 grit, and just wind that down until my straight edge is flat, and then we can change over and start working this. Now the edges are finished, so I've got to clean the glue off, but yeah, that's basically the desktop. That's now ready for finishing. So now I've got that braced and flat, we're going to work on that other big top over there. Right, 3 hours later, I think we're there. So it had more of a bow in it than I'd have liked. So I put the back plate on first and clamped that down and screwed it. And I've screwed through from the back, so these are clamped, screwed and glued in order to pull this flat, because even this had a bow in it, which doesn't surprise me really, and it's quite thick as well. It's 25 mils, an inch thick. Anyway, so I've got it all clamped down and in position. That will that'll all dry nicely and be solid and won't ever twist, and then I can sand the top side flat. This was not the best lump of birch to use for this, but it was all I had that I could cut up on the sawmill, so yeah, I've put an extra bit of time into it. It's got some extra screws. I'd much rather have jointed it and glued it in a different way, but this is all about using what you've got with the smallest amount of cost, if any, that's possible. And so far this is, I'm into it, 30 screws and some glue, so yeah, and the time it takes to do it. So we're doing okay. And I wouldn't normally make cabinets and furniture out of birch. It's the nearest thing to hardwood we've got here, so yeah, we'll see how fine we can make some rough old birch. There's much better birch out in the yard, and it's the glass species that you want. This isn't so good. This is just a ropey old birch, but anyway, like I say, it's as near as hardwood we can got. And I like some of it because you've heard me talk about half-life timber before. The nice grains in this, right, and even this knot in here is dead. The nice grains in this, especially these colours here, this is not a typical grain for birch, it's half-life. Now I've managed to cut it, get my hands on it and save it, but it's neither alive nor dead. And when you cut a tree down, it's not dead. Just because it's not attached to roots and it's not got sap flowing through it, it's not dead. It goes into a state of animation. And if you catch half-life timber at the right time, you can preserve it and it will no longer rot or deteriorate, but you have to catch it right at the right time. And I think this was about spot on. So when I turn it over and then work the top, we start oiling it and getting some materials into it, it will look quite spectacular, as opposed to your normal straightforward good grain on your birch. Same tree, this exactly the same. So you always sand down the grain, you never go across the grain. When you've got, say, a door or a door frame and you've got two coming together, you really need to avoid that on a coarse belt and go to a finer belt. Anyway, I'll give you a quick demonstration of keeping the belt sander moving, and we'll just flatten this down and then we'll move on to a much finer belt. So on a belt sander, or on a lot of more professional tools, you have a button on the side there. Once you pull the trigger in, you can push the button and then you haven't got to continuously pull the trigger. Thankfully, over the years, Makita has recessed this button, and whilst you won't be able to see it inside, so it's really hard to press, so you can't do it by accident. The other thing about a heavy professional belt sander is, if the trigger position is on and it's locked on and you let go of it, it's off. And it will go off, and it will smash everything in its way, damage everything on its way, and then potentially damage the machine as well. They take quite a bit of hanging on to. So you don't have to push down with these. Pushing down with one of these is a bit like pushing hard into a tree with a chainsaw. If you've got to do that, it means your chain's blunt. You should sharpen it. So I want to prepare the front edge, and it's not great. So before I sand it, I'm going to use a planer to get myself a nice flat continuous front edge. Then I can sand it. for the first structural part of the framework, but also will serve as the drawer runner support. Wouldn't it be nice to have nice metal smooth runners in here, nice soft close? All well, we haven't, so we're not. So it will be very much a traditional way, timber on timber. It's going to be time to go outside and start running the log trails in a minute. That's what we got to do. Right. That's the drawer runners on there. I think we'll turn our sights back to the desktop. Right, I'll put a quarter round on this, and I've put a radius around on this end of the desk. This end's going to be up against the wall. This end you've got to walk round, and corners are no good for my hips. And we've turned this back over, so we're down to 120 grit on the belt sander. Done that one. Now we're moving to flat air sander, orbital. So I finished this one. It was finished with a 250 grit on the orbital sander, and I've hand finished the edges. Now this is the main desk. I'm not 100% sure what I'm going to finish that with, but I know what I'm doing with this one. So we can see we've gone from the unnatural anemic white, and this is no colour added. This is just a clear coat, and it's a varnish, but it's watered down with a paint thinner for its first sealing coat. So once that's completely dried, then I'll use 1000 grit and I'll sand that down, and that'll give it its glass finish sealing coat. But you can see it really brings out the grain and the colours. So given what I started with, I'm relatively happy with that. And the desk, I'm not going to put anything on yet because I'm not convinced I want to varnish that. I might want to oil that and then seal it, or wax it and seal it. Yeah, not convinced about that. It's just after lunch on the next day, and it's just got light. The weather has just not shifting. So last night, when me and Casper, who's sitting over there, looked bored, when we went out the last time, just past midnight, that was minus 34 Celsius outside. And it's hovered around there. This morning I went out, it's minus 28. So we're not going out, we're just not. Anyway, despite the extreme temperatures, just the other side of this 3mm glass, albeit there's 2 sheets of 3mm glass there, it is only the old school mercury flattened 3mm glass. This first coat that we did here is completely dry, and you can feel all the little pimples on there. So we're going to use 1000 grit sandpaper by hand and take all that off to get a smooth finish. And then just when I thought I'd finished last night, I realised I'd missed a desktop. So off camera, I laminated this up last night, and I've sanded it down this morning, and now I've glued it. And I suppose you're wondering where all this is going. Well, I'm just gonna show you now. So for the last 5 years, I'm inside a room, inside a huge room, which was one of the classrooms. I've had my computer set up on an old ping pong table in what was an old classroom, and for whatever reason, this is at this end of the building. Anyway, this is, without any shadow of a doubt, the coldest room in the entire building, whatever time of the year it is, and it's just almost impossible to get any heat into it, albeit it does have some radiators, but for some reason it only has 3 in here. Well, we was doing some plumbing down in this corner, if you remember, and that's what we've got. Let me turn the camera around and I'll explain where we are. What am I doing here? Right, so this is something I've been working on, and this is where we put the plumbing tails in behind the wall, and I've now dry lined. This wasn't supposed to be dry lined, it's supposed to be tongue and groove. And I put in 2 small offices. I put one in for Sarah and one in for me. For all the building I've done and all the construction I've done so far this year, I didn't have enough boards. I've run out, so I let the dry line it, which I'm very disappointed in, because it's not. Can I dry line? Yeah. Anyway, so the big cabinet that I'm working out is going to go across this wall. So the big top that we're working on now is going to go from one side to the other, and then it's going to have drawers and cupboards below, and then I'm going to do cabinets with glass doors up the top. The desk, that's going off of this wall here, but I also have this alcove here, so that one I've just made up goes in there, which is going to be an iMac station, editing station, with a desk here. And I've put the desk in the middle for several reasons. That's the door, and that opens against the desk. I like the door and the desk between me and the door. Makes sense, right? So we're at first fix, and I've dry lined and sanded. But anyway, that's kind of a quick explanation. It's only a very small office, and I've dropped the ceiling considerably. The original ceiling height is around 5 feet above this, because obviously it's a classroom, or was an old one. I haven't got any 1000 grit, so I'm going to use 1200 grit on a block. And I just realised I had my light on in that other thing. Why have I always got a headlight on this winter? Everywhere's dark. That's as light as it'll get, middle of the day. It's only just got light. Otherwise, what you do is you spend all day going into rooms and switching lights on. There's only very few. Where I've renovated the building, I've put LEDs on, and you can switch lights on and off. Otherwise, they're all these big fluorescent tubes, and it costs a lot to start them up, and you can only be in a room maybe a few seconds at a time. And all the crevices and nooks and crannies and hallways and passageways of the building are unlit, just because I can't afford to have all the lights burning all the time. So it's just as easy to have a headlight on. in addition to that, the darkness falls really fast. You can be out in the yard or the tractor shed somewhere and the light's gone. Right, so we use this 1200 on a block, and we're using such fine grit because what we don't want to do is leave any score marks. All we're doing is flattening this down. There we go, that's all that needs. We'll give that a quick blast off with some air now, and then we can go on with the first full coat of varnish. So why varnish? Once this is properly varnished with 3 coats, it's maintenance free. I like to add wax and oils and work it, but for this cabinet at the back there, I want to be able to put things on it, display things on it without worrying about marking the timber. So 3 coats of varnish, a base coat and 3 coats on top, to give a glass-like finish gives a strong protection. And in that office, it's going to be inside artificial light the whole time, so it will give a perfect glass-like finish, but a protection that I want so that I can put things on it without worrying about it. Right, we'll let that dry. See the air bubbles? A lot of those will come out. And what doesn't come out, that's what we sand down. Well, this video's getting a bit long there, so I think we'll call it a day on that one. Don't forget to like the video, subscribe if you want to see more in the series, and I'll catch you on the next one. Bye for now, and thanks for watching.